in this one, we're talking about owning your own website, not being a victim, and London Real Army. And this one is highly relevant, and it ties into something I love, which is basically digital sharecropping. Now, early on, digital sharecropping is basically the idea that you're on Facebook, you're on other platforms, and they use your content. You're on there, but they actually make money off you, or they basically own all that content that you've got. And that's why you really want to own a website. Now, this is highly relevant. Watch this. This is just nuts, but this is highly relevant right now, and why you should basically be setting up a WordPress site. Let me show you this. This has to do with London Real. Brian Rose, 9 years of content. The guy is awesome. Puts out some amazing material and has had some amazing interviews with tons of different people. 9 years of content on YouTube. Just outstanding, right? So what happens? One interview, just one interview, and boom, he's gone. Not only from YouTube, I'm going to play you a clip, and it's going to come from Brian himself. He's going to explain a bit about what happened. And this is used with fair use, but I've used it a little more, actually a lot more than I would normally do, because he wants this message out there. He wants people to know. And the London Real Army is in response to what happened, but he could only do this if he had a tribe and he had his website. So check this out. I'm going to play you a little clip and then explain how this can come together and how you can basically protect yourself during a time when it's become a little more critical to do so. Check it out.
As you know, as of yesterday, we were banned on LinkedIn. My personal profile, London Real, it's all been completely erased. I realized today that's owned by Microsoft, which probably his biggest shareholder is Bill Gates. See my last interview. We've also been banned on YouTube, banned on Facebook, banned on Vimeo, banned on Dropbox, banned by Ofcon. The list goes on and on and on. And I want to say a couple things about that. First of all, I really appreciate everyone's support. And if you're following the hashtag London Real Army, you can see there's so many of you around the world that are putting up words of support and content and trying to put out our message of freedom of speech. I really believe we all need to be able to say what we want to say and allow other people to listen to that and then make their own decisions. And that's what this entire last week of madness has been all about. But I also wanted to say something very specific to all of you. And that is this one statement. I am not a victim. I am not a victim. I refuse to be a victim in all of this scenario. And I know lately in the past 10 years, and maybe because of social media, we seem to glorify our victims, right? That's the best way to get support on Twitter, is to tell everyone how you've been mistreated. You know, I don't play that. If you look at our previous generation, we used to celebrate the heroes of this world, people that overcame adversity and achieved greatness despite circumstances, like Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King or people like that. You know, we didn't celebrate them because they're a victim. And I don't want you to celebrate me or London Real because we are victims either, because that is living in the past. We all know that person that wants to talk about the glory days of something that happened in high school, you know, the quarterback, or something that happened in the past, but that is self-defeating. I am always looking forward, which means I am never a victim in any situation. I exercise something called extreme ownership, and I was taught this by Jocko Willink, the US Navy SEAL, who we've had twice on London Real, one in the studio right when he started his podcast, and one where we made a small documentary film about him called Lessons from War, where we walked around the HMS Belfast. Both are on our website. But Jocko has something called extreme ownership, and I teach this inside the London Real Academy to all of my students, whether they're my business accelerator or my broadcast yourself program or my public speaking thing. In the first module, I make them exercise extreme ownership, which means from now on, everything in your life is your fault. It's all you. That means everything. It rains, it's you. Someone gets elected, it's you. You know, something happens on Mars, you take ownership. And this might sound debilitating, like I can't hold all that up, but actually it's the opposite. It's really freeing, and it means, wow, I'm actually in control of my life. I'm no longer a subject to my environment, to my education, to my upbringing, to my socioeconomic status. And it's so empowering, and yet so difficult, because it's so easy to go back into the victim mode. Oh, look what happened to me. Oh, it's my parents, it's my country, I'm an immigrant because of my race or my religion or blah, 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 right? And it's easy to slip into it. And honestly, this last week, I felt how easy it was, because I've never been a victim on such a grand scale as I have this week.
Now, I'm going to connect the dots on this. This is awesome. Basically, you know, he's eliminated even his LinkedIn profile, which there's some history behind how that all came together, but it was only one interview. I'm not going to go into the interview because the person and the subject are actually banned in a way. And but I'm going to make this highly relevant, because if you look at digital sharecropping and how every platform is actually a private entity, which means they have their own restrictions and can have their own rules and guidelines that you have to follow. Now, the way that Brian Rose has basically gotten around this is he's enabled his tribe of followers, both when he's broadcasting, but also with an email and having his own website. When you have your own website on WordPress, and it was become so much easier these days to have a website, because you can use page builders like Divi. I love Divi Builder. It's made it so much easier, drag and drop, easy to set up a website. There are limitations. It can be a little bit slower. In some cases, you do have to do some optimization, but overall, hands down, it's great. Now, this website can be anywhere. And there are other page builders. You don't have to go with Divi. I love Divi. I think it works well. But finding whatever page builder works for you is great. But the thing of it is, when platforms exercise the control and wipe you off the face of the earth, so to speak, you can then switch to your website. But the other part of that is email. And one of the things I've spoken to before, MailerLite is something that is free for up to 1,000 subscribers. And you can go and check it out, or you can go direct through this affiliate link. It does help the show, obviously, but you can go direct if you don't feel comfortable with that. Totally understand. But it's great because you can do up to 1,000 subscribers for free, and you can get started. Now, again, hands down, it's good to your own website and doing that with WordPress, because then you can basically, if something like this happens to you, or if you look at, other people who have basically had something similar and not as extreme, but something similar happened, they can basically set up their own website. So it's great. So regardless of the tools you use, you can basically change hosts. Here's a little tip that I found particularly useful. A lot of hosts, website hosts, will offer you a free domain. Don't go for it. Separate your domain from your host, and here's why. Basically, I found it much easier to point my website. So if my domain, I purchased it separately, then I can point to a different host, and that can take hours. They do a disclaimer and they say 24 to 48 hours, but really it can just take hours. You're basically pointing your website to a different spot, different host, okay, when you decide to change or need to change. Now, that's quite different from having to transfer ownership. That can take 5 days, some cases longer. You have to do some hosts will entrap you that way. So it's best to buy your domain separate from your host so that you can point to a different host when you need to and not have to transfer ownership of that domain. So just a little tip there. I found it highly useful. It's come in very handy. But don't be a victim. Obviously, be prepared and know that it can happen regardless of what kind of history you've had. I mean, Brian Rose has had 9 years on YouTube. 9 years of just awesome content. One interview with this particular individual and the subject where he crosses, makes some connections that the mainstream doesn't really like, doesn't agree with, and it's called disinformation. Now, disinformation, as you know, can come in various forms. Do you want other people to decide your information for you? Now, regardless, this isn't really about censorship, so to speak. It's about ownership. And ownership of your website is one way that you can basically get ahead of anything that could happen. Whether your content, you may decide, my content is never going to be that extreme, or I don't want to say extreme, but never rub against the mainstream. That's okay. You're not always going to know what kind of content you're going to have in the future. You may find that changes happen where suddenly the content that you found very useful is all of a sudden not disliked or seen as disinformation by the mainstream. Mainstream media is owned by about 5 different major corporations, and so they have a tight control. You'll notice that the narrative is often the same, including different phrases that they'll use across networks to get their message across. Again, whatever on that. You're not a victim to that. What we're talking about is basically setting up a website yourself and making sure you grow your audience. MailerLite, which I showed before, you can get 1,000 subscribers free. Set up, a quick landing page or website, but again, have something different with WordPress. So that's the whole idea. What I really love is this idea of extreme ownership also, because it says, okay, you have ownership of that, and it's empowering rather than disempowering. And some of you will identify with that, and some of you won't, because it comes from Jaco. The whole idea is kind of, Jaco comes from a military mindset that may rub you the wrong way. I don't know. It doesn't for me. I like taking ideas from different people, regardless of what their background is, and seeing what different people are doing and not saying, okay, well, that guy was in the military, so I'm not really, I can't identify or wrap my head around that. Or that person is a hippie, and so I can't identify or wrap my head around the ideas that they're presenting. That, I think, is a cultural barrier that's been set up for you. But that gets into conspiracy theories, obviously. But it's still something where you say, okay, what's the idea? What merit? Obviously, what merit does it have on its face, rather than saying where does it come from? And so Jaco, I think, has some awesome ideas, and it really can help towards procrastination, which builds up over time on different things, and extreme ownership can help with procrastination. At least it has in some cases for me, although it never goes away. Procrastination's always there, right? So check out the London Real website, because that's where you'll find the content that was basically wiped him off of the face of the earth, so to speak. He's back. He's able to do different updates on YouTube. But he's been taken off of LinkedIn, and he describes all the others. To not let this happen to you and support what other people are doing, it's important to, he's saying, bring in clips, bring in and share the information if you identify with it, being able to share that. And if you get wiped off, another one that I've saw recently happened to, and it's happened to a number of different channels. I keep going on with examples, but another one is The Prepared Mind, and he's basically a prepper, and he goes on to rants and things, but his site was also, or his YouTube channel was actually taken down. His audience got into the fray. He had a dedicated audience, and they complained to YouTube. Whether that worked or not, I don't know. But regardless, he had Patreon, which is interesting. Patreon is awesome to get started and get people to, you're supporting people, and maybe $2 a month to get yourself started. That's one way to go. And Patreon works well for a lot of different people. It's very simple. It is a third-party platform, so you still want to have your own website. But with a prepared mind, he used Patreon as a platform to help him escape the censorship, so to speak. Meanwhile, he made a backup channel. He made a separate channel. He said, subscribe there, because if this other one gets shut down, go to that channel. So regardless, that's where the audience comes in handy. And although he's built his audience on YouTube, I think it would be good for the prepared mind, or any number of people, to have a website, not just rely on Patreon, because again, it's a digital platform, it's a third-party platform, and anyone can get kind of on that platform, subject to different guidelines, and wipe you off the face of the digital planet. So having your own website, again, that's still vulnerable, but it is one way of backing up what you've got out there with your content. You don't know, actually, moving forward, what content may or may not be censored. So regardless of censorship or whatnot, it's also just having control of your own site. And in the past, another example is with Amazon. Amazon's great to sell through. I sell through Amazon. Fulfillment by Amazon, and also fulfillment by merchant, that being me. I sell my stuff on there. And the thing of it is, with algorithm updates this last year especially, but the year before, I'm in different groups, Facebook groups of other people who are fellow entrepreneurs who are selling stuff on the platform, and they were getting whacked right and left by the algorithm and being pushed down. And businesses went down right and left because of those algorithm updates. So that's another example. It's not just censorship, but the algorithm updates that where they'll push different things. If you look at Etsy, also another example where they'll make changes to how you advertise or who they advertise to. They recently did an update where they stopped charging you for advertising out into Google's platform and just made it internal. And then you could add that on. But there's stories of Etsy doing their own little game and algorithm update. So, you have eBay, you have all these platforms, and they do make updates on a regular basis. So it's critical, of course, regardless if you're doing, Real London Army and you're supporting that, or whether you are trying to basically create a relationship with your audience, maybe selling things, having that website and having an audience that you can connect with and say, hey, algorithm has done this to me. Go now and do this and do that. And so that's what London Real has done with, I think, great success. I've seen, if you follow the hashtag LondonRealArmy, you can see what different people are doing. And if you've developed a tribe, you can have them help you as you've helped them in the past. And that can save your bacon. That can save you as you might be in disagreement with a platform like YouTube, which is taking you down. The Prepared Mind, his channel, he finally got his channel back up. They did disagree with a couple of his videos, I guess. Again, this content is interesting because if you look, I've looked at my own channel and seen where they've said, like, if you put in weapons or if you look on YouTube, they have different guidelines now. Some of the keywords that you might use, guns, ammo, things like that, where they're saying basically, if you have those words, if you're talking about those things, you may find yourself not able to produce a video. So, regardless on if you're talking about extreme censorship with London Real and the London Real Army, which I definitely love being a part of because I believe in his cause and his saying you're not a victim. And also the person he had on, his whole message by the end was, as one, as an audience, as a people, we are greater and stronger than all these different methods that are coming down the pike and trying to control us. And that was a beautiful message, and one that I definitely believe in. As we band together and we connect the dots on different things happening around the world and how to basically stay psychologically and otherwise whole. It's good to grow your own audience, regardless of if it's email or just connecting and collaborating with other people. So it's this moment when a website comes in handy, not only for, of course, buying and selling stuff, but also building your audience and getting out from under the heel, as some people like to say, of different platforms, because they do have their own, not being a public entity. So just being a private entity, they have more ability to have you follow their guidelines, what you've agreed to in their contract, you agree to use the platform. So definitely highly recommend using Divi with WordPress, but there are other page builders out there. So go, and if you don't already have your own website, I would definitely start building, keep it simple. Do a one-page website to the start off, just get going. It's about $12 a year for a domain typically, and the hosting isn't, you can get hosting for I think $3 to $5. But if you want to go faster, which I definitely recommend with WordPress, but keep it simple at first. Just get yourself up there, and even if you just use Lite, then and again you get 1,000 subscribers free. So it's getting that momentum, and even though it's you are using Lite, so it is another platform that you're using, you're at least getting the process down in a much simpler way for free. And that way, as you research other options, such as getting WordPress up, you can do that without getting stuck in the tech of it. Like, you might consider WordPress somewhat complicated. It's really not once you put in a little bit of time. It's really not, especially with the page builders. But to get started, don't instead of having that hurdle, go ahead and just do MailerLite or something similar where you can just get something up and start growing your audience. If London Real and Brian Rose didn't have the audience and didn't have the website, he really would have a difficult time really making a pivot and being able to still support what he wants to say and support his audience. And they supported him. It's a great collaboration. So that's about it for this one. Hope you found this useful. Definitely check out what London Real says, London Real website. Check out the movement there, as well as, the previous video talking about in the lockdown. And it looks like we're going to be having that ending somewhat soon. But regardless, never be the victim, but go ahead and put yourself out there and start building with the time that you have now, so that you can basically go and not wait for somebody else to say go. You make your own momentum, not the victim. Go and do that. Create a website, build your audience, be safe, be clean, and always stay creative. Thanks for watching. See you next time.